Hi, my name is Siona, and today we'll be talking about speeches in a parliamentary round. We'll be detailing in depth of how you should structure your contentions and how you should read your speeches so that you can maximize your chances to win. If you're new to parliamentary debate, and if you haven't already checked out the overview to a parliamentary debate round video, then you should probably check it out on Outreach Debate's YouTube channel. And it basically goes over how a round looks, coin flips, and basically just like briefly overviewing the speeches and the role of the speakers in the speeches. Just to quickly go back to that, um, the overview of a round in Parley is that we have six speeches. The Gov is for the motion, the Op is against it. Each team has a first and a second speaker. And on the government, the first speaker is called the Prime Minister, and the second speaker is called a member of the government. On the opposition side, the first speaker is called the Leader of Opposition, and the second speaker is called the Member of Opposition. If you're going to a local tournament, which is not that big of a deal, and it's just like not a grand nationals kind of tournament, then it is really, really fair. Like it's a fair chance that you would not be called upon. So usually when you go to a big nationals, and especially if you're in around like the finals round, then they'll say, like the judge or the moderator will say things like, now I call upon the Prime Minister to give the first speech, which will not exceed 8 minutes, etc. So it looks like that. It is um like that. That is how formally parliamentary debate is supposed to work. But on the local circuit, on like tournaments that are virtual and not that prestigious and not that big nationals, you would probably not see people refer to you like that, and you would probably just be Gov first speaker or Op first speaker. So that is how rounds work. And quickly, the overview of the speech order is the government first speaker gives the first speech, which is called the PMC or the Prime Minister Constructive, that is 7 minutes. Then it's the Op first speaker giving the first speech, which is the Leader of Opposition Constructive, which is 8 minutes. Then there's the Gov second speaker giving the second speech, 8 minutes. Op second speaker giving the Op second speech, which is also 8 minutes. Then there's the Op third speaker, or the Op first speaker giving the Op third speech. Now, if you will notice, this is an 8 minute block. That means it is an op block where the op speaks for 12 minutes straight. We'll be going over how you can use this to your advantage, and we'll be also going over how the government can actually use all their time to avoid the like unfair advantage kind of that the opposition gets speaking for 8 minutes straight. But that is one thing with parliamentary debate. And then the last speech is given by the government first speaker, which is the Gov third speech. Um, all the speeches have a 30-second grace period, which means that you get extra 30 seconds after your speech times to finish a point. This is not to introduce a new argument. This is not to like just like suddenly speed through an entire contention. It is to finish your point. Now, let's talk about the speeches in detail. The first speech of the round is the Prime Minister Constructive, or the Gov First speech given by the Gov First speaker, and it is 7 minutes. In this speech, the Prime Minister should deliver the government case. Now, what does this like include? The gov case? It is definitions, framework, and a policy plan, if applicable. If you're having a policy round, for instance, there was this motion that was about sanctions in Syria, if like whether or not Europe should be placing sanctions in Syria. In cases like that, it is always good to have a policy plan, especially since you're the government. You get this power to be able to set the framework, to be able to set the definitions, to be able to like put forth a plan. And it is obviously not a good thing to abuse this power and to like make your definitions, make your policy plan very, very skewed to your side to a point where your opposition literally cannot garner offense. It is not good to do that. But it is a privilege to be able to like set these definitions and framework in the round so that they can benefit you. So, for instance, when we had the sanctions topic, we set forth a policy plan that was like, yes, Europe will have sanctions on Syria, but on the given conditions. And we gave a bunch of conditions, and that was our policy plan. Obviously, in the eyes of a few of the judges, they thought that this was like really skewed and that it was really to our side, but the opposition did not refute it. The opposition accepted it. So in that case, we still ended up winning the round because of the policy plan. So in that case, it is always good to have these. Even if the opposition can always refute your definitions or refute your policy plans, there is a good chance that they might not, and they might not see what you're trying to do with the policy plan, but always have something in mind, an intention of making these like plans or making these definitions the way you are saying it, and so that they can like help your side. Now, depending on how complex the motion is, you should not be spending more than a minute or 2 minutes on top of the case. Top of case is the definitions, framework, and plan. Um, at the end of this section, many teams also choose to include overviews. Like you can have observations or analysis if it's not a policy plan. So you say, oh, the framework is going to be net benefit or utilitarianism, which I'm going to explain why those are two important ones. But you say your framework, you speak about your definitions, but then if you know that this is like a really common debate and you can predict kind of what your opposition is going to be saying, you can make observations at the start of your like on the top of your case saying, oh, observation, the team can only garner offense if they do blah blah blah. But again, do not abuse this power. It just wastes debate time if you know that it's like skewed and you know the judge will be able to see right through it. If you know your opposite opponent will be able to see right through it, do not abuse the power. But always use it to your advantage. And yeah, that is the thing. So talking about framework, usually in a parliamentary debate round, you should always pick net benefits or utilitarianism as your framework. They both mean the same thing. You're just trying to maximize utility in society. You're trying to maximize the good and minimize the suffering for people. And it is generally good because it gives like enough offense to both sides. You can both be debating on that with good contentions and you can prove utility easily. Except for when you have like super niche or like super, like if you think it is really necessary for you to be targeting a specific community for a framework, or if you should be using something as structural violence or reducing structural oppression as your framework, you should probably only go for that if the motion or the topic tells you, like specifically that, oh, this debate is going to be about this community. So the framework should be maximizing utility for this community, or the framework should just in general be reducing structural violence. But apart from that, your framework should mostly always be net benefits and not should not be something too philosophical. Um, Next, after you're done with your top of the case, you move on to each contentions. Now, it is very basic. You should only have like two or three contentions unless you really, really need a fourth one, but make sure that all three of your contentions are unique. What I mean by this is that if your contention one is like economic benefit, don't make your contention two about poverty because like they essentially achieve the same things. The impact of both of those are going to be the same. So in that case, you make those one contention, maybe with different subpoints or maybe with two different claims, but make sure that you are not like just dumping a lot of contentions with not clear claim warrants. They're just like contention one, blah blah blah, and then you simply just say contention two, etc. Your contentions need to have a claim, a warrant, and an impact. A warrant is basically, even if you have access to evidence or don't have access to evidence, make your warrant more like logical and like you need to explain the argument rather than like relying on numbers. So, even if you're given access to statistics or the internet, you should make sure that this is not carrying your case and that your claim, your logic, your explanation of your claim and why it's true matters more. And most importantly, after the claim and the warrant, the most important thing is the impact. If you do not have impacts for your contentions, it is virtually impossible for you to be weighing in the end of the round. Um, we also covered weighing on another average debate lecture. You should really watch it. But to win a debate round, you don't only need the arguments, you need the impacts, and you need to be able to weigh the impacts to prove why your arguments matter more. So your contention need to have a claim, warrant, and impact. Even though the Prime Minister Constructor seems like the easiest speech, it's like pretty straightforward, you just need to put forth everything, you need to be super intentional and super judicious with what you're saying and how you're putting it, right? So as I said, framework definitions plan should always like serve your side, but not like skew it to your side. It's like not to an extremely, oh, it's only going to benefit my side, but it should help your case. It should not just be like an arbitrary, yeah, so here's the Google definition I picked up. No, it should be something that just like crystallizes the round and it's going to be like setting a good start to the round and like encompasses everything that you're going to be speaking about. Your contentions. As we already saw, the op is going to have a 12-minute block. They're going to be speaking for 12 minutes straight, and the judge is really going to like be zoned in into what they're saying if they're listening to what like they're speaking for 12 minutes. The only time the prime minister speaks is the first and the last speech, where you barely have any avenues to create new arguments, right? So you should be really, really careful with what you're saying, and you should really be intentional with everything you're doing in the first speech. The second speech is the LOC, which is the opposition first speaker giving the first speech, and it is 8 minutes. Now, this is also a really important speech because in this speech, the leader of opposition should deliver not only the opposition case, but you also need to refute the government case. You do not have to read the entire case during the LOC, but you should read most of it. And I say this because um, if you don't have enough time to go through every contention you thought that you wanted to get through, like that is fine. You still need to just make your most important argument and then move on to refute their case. A big mistake a lot of teams do in this speech is that they go forth and only give the constructive and don't do the rebuttals. Why is this like problematic? Is because after this speech, it's the government speaker giving refutations. But if you did not respond to their speech, they're not going to have new clash. You're not going to have enough clash in the debate round because you did not respond to their case, so they don't really have to make refutations. They only need to extend what they said, and then it's going to be your speaker, and then it just becomes a debate round of like repetitive arguments, not enough clash, etc. So it's not good. Even if you cannot get, if you think that a lot of your constructive is super important and you cannot get through everything in their case, begin doing it. Make sure to leave at least 2 minutes of speech times to begin refuting the government case. Um, so here's how you should structure your LOC. First, you go on and refute the framework definitions and plan if you think they're abusive. Don't waste time providing a counter definition, a counter framework if both the frameworks and definitions mean the same thing. What I mean by that is if the government comes and says, "Oh, our framework is going to be net benefits because we want to maximize utility." But you are supposed to go there and you think that, yeah, you agree with that, but you go for it and try to say it in your own words. You try to say, yes, we agree with net benefits, but we think that we should minimize suffering. You should really not say that and waste time unless you think it's like really pivotal to what you're trying to say. So don't waste time on framework definitions or policy plan until and unless you think what the government did was abusive and super skewed to their side. That is when you provide counter definitions. That is when you provide counter frameworks or simply refute what they're trying to say. A little point on that is that if you don't agree with what their framework is, you are supposed to give a counter framework. You don't just say, we don't agree with their framework. Okay, sure. If you don't agree, what is the counter one? What do you want the judge to evaluate the round on? So you've tackled the top of the case. This should not take more than 1 minute maximum. So that's like top of the case. Then you get into your contentions. Again, claim, warrant, impacts, and and then you need to leave enough time to refute the government case. An ideal split would be 4 minutes on your case and 4 minutes on their case, if provided that there's no top of the case refutations. And your goal is to provide some sort of refutation to each of the government's contentions. And if you have time, begin refuting in more depth. Right. So that is your job. You lay out your contentions. That is all well and good. But the more important part of the LOC is that you get through their contentions and refute it. Through the government's contentions. The next thing is the MG. It is the government's second speech given by the second speaker. It is also 8 minutes. The member of the government is the third speech in the round, and you want to do two things in this speech. So this is where the debate is starting to get more heated. There's more clash. There are many arguments to tackle, right? So your first speaker laid out the speech for you. The first speaker of the opposition, they refuted your case and you have to get through their case. First, you need to respond to the refutations made by the opposition in their first speech to your case. So here's how it goes. You're the second speaker of the member of the government, or you're the second speaker, or you're the member of the government, and in the speech, you begin on top of the case. If they refuted your top of the case, if they refuted framework definitions, you provide a counter refutation and you say, no, this is why we think our thing still stands. if that's necessary. If they concede it to yours, don't waste time on the framework and move on. So you address the top of the case, then you go on to your case. You're supposed to extend your own contentions, but extension does not mean that you repeat everything your first speaker said. The judge already has it down on their flow. You simply reinstate the points that you think were important. So, for instance, my contention one was about the economy. So, as the second speaker, I'm going to be saying first, our contention one was about the economy. We think there are two benefits. One, we're going to have an economic boost. Unemployment is going to go down. And two, that means that poverty is going to go down and we're going to reduce impacts such as like cyclical poverty that affects like some number of people. That is how long your extension should be. After you extend your case and you just like reinforce the important points of your contention, refute whatever they said. So refute the rebuttals they made to your case. So my opposition speaker said blah blah blah. I think, or the true argument here is etc. or like whatever your argument is. You need to do this, but you also have to be really good with signposting. That means our contention one was this on subpoint A, this is what the opposition speaker said, and here's my rebuttal. This is what the opposition speaker said on subpoint B, and here's my rebuttal. You need to make it really easy to be able to flow because at this point of the round, it's like really messy and it's like all over the place. So you need to be good at signposting. So your first job is to refute everything said to your case. Next, it's a constructive rebuttal speech, meaning that you should go down the flow and refute all the points made by their team. So you refute their contentions. So again, as I said, make sure to signpost clearly. And you need to make it very clear to the judge what side of the flow you are on. So first, as I said, you're done with refuting whatever they said to your case, then you need to make it clear to the judge that you are moving on to the opposition's flow and that you're talking about their case, and now you're going to be giving rebuttals to their case. So now you go down their case, you go down to the claim, you go down through the warrant, you say why your impact matters more, but don't explicitly start weighing in the middle of the round and make it really messy. Rather, just like tackle the arguments, make the refutations, and in the end, if you have time, it looks really good if you want, like if you start weighing, because then after your speech, there's a 12-minute op block. So after the speech, you need to make sure it's like really good if you start to weigh in the speech. But if you don't have enough time, that's okay. Your main job is to refute all the refutations they make on your case and rebut their case in detail, in depth. Now, it's the member of the opposition. This speech is 8 minutes. It is the first speech in the round, and it's given by the second speaker of the opposition. This speech includes some basic elements, such as the MG. So you are still a rebuttal speaker. You are still responding to the refutations made in the MG, and you refute all the government's points. However, if the MG responded to the refutations made in the LOC, the member of the opposition can also refute those responses, as well as introduce new refutations to the Gov case. So this speech gets a little confusing at times or kind of gets repetitive, because your job is to refute all the refutations that are made. Your job is not to crystallize around. That's the speech after this, but you go through the refutations that they make like on the opposition case. So you had your speaker laid out the constructive, someone made responses to it. Now you make new responses, or you make new responses to the refutations they made, and you try to prove why you're winning that argument. But it should not sound like it's going nowhere, right? You should not just drastically pull out something new and that you just don't know how it fits into the round. It should be kind of like, yeah, this is my extension of my case. This is what they refuted. And now this is my response, which fits into the theme of the round perfectly. Again, you need to signpost clearly. Like this speech is so important for signposting because you're going down like their refutations to your case. You're going down your refutations to their case. You're going down a lot of arguments that were made in the round, and you're trying to like sum it up and group them without like weighing it. You're trying to make arguments you're still trying to refute, but you are not like completely absurdly making new arguments, right? You want to begin weighing, especially in like essentially already introducing argument weighing that your partner will continue in their final speech. while you are not just coming up there and you're just not just like summarizing everything, you still, in the last few minutes or last like a minute or so in your speech, you need to begin weighing. You need to make your arguments sound like they're cohesive and they're put together and that like they are kind of hitting this point, they're kind of winning in under this framework. Um, so this is the last chance for the opposition to bring up new logic or argumentation. Yes, I said that you are not supposed to make absurdly new arguments, but that is only if it does not fit into the theme. You are allowed to make new arguments, especially because the gov just went down and made new arguments to your case. So you are allowed to make new arguments. You are allowed to bring out logic and stuff like new logic, but make sure that it fits into the theme of the framework. It fits into the general like debate round that is going on. Um, so ensure you have time to cover all arguments and consider like the importance of them when budgeting it, like the budgeting your time, right? So that is how it goes. It might sound super complex, but when you are in a round, it just flows. So it's like, yeah, I'm going down my speech. I'm going down the refutations they make to my speech. Then I'm going to respond to them. I'm making new arguments. I'm also making it sound like cohesive, and it's all fitting under the framework. The judge can see that the debate has become like greatly about these two themes, such as like maybe the debate has become about the economy and the international relations based on a specific policy and all the arguments I'm making, which are not just like simply repeating everything my first speaker said, it is going to flow. You just need to trust that when you're around, you need to stick to a narrative. You need to make new logical arguments, but you also need to like make it fit in an overall theme, in an overall framework. So that is your role. You refute, you make new arguments, and if time permits, you begin to weigh in the end. Then is the LOR, which is the opposition third speech. Again, this is the 12-minute block we're talking about. Your second speaker just spent time going down new refutations, new logical arguments. Your job is not to make new arguments. You are not allowed to make new arguments. Someone might call a POO if you try to. Your round is to crystallize it around. Like just like clear the head of the judge because they just heard so many arguments from so many speakers. You need to like bring it down to like three or four wording issues you need to weigh, and that is your role as the third speaker. It is a non-constructive speech, and while new weighing and examples are out, new argumentation or logic is not. The purpose of this speech is to use all of the argumentation made thus far in the round and use it to convince the judge why you should be winning. This means crystallizing, clarifying the most important points made, and weighing. As we have already made a lecture on weighing in parliamentary debate, there's a lot of ways you can weigh and a lot of metrics you can use to simply just prove that you're winning the round. So you weigh, and then you can also organize the speech into wording issues. Like it is wording issues are basically just like head-on-head clashes of different issues. So if you think the round has come down to um like the economy or international relations, you are taking those two parts and you're basically saying, here's what the debate has come down to. So the my opponent tries to feed you this information about why this would be bad for the economy, etc. But we see that this is good for the economy. Here's the arguments my opponent, like my partner made, and here's why we're winning them. And if you look to the impact, ours is outweighing more. And that is how you're supposed to crystallize the round based on like specific categories. You're either grouping them based on the similar themes they share, or you're grouping them on the basis of like impact weighing. So you're saying that based on magnitude, here's why we're winning. So that is your role. And since it is a 12-minute block, you really need to make sure that you are not being repetitive. If you're simply just saying everything your speakers, like your partner said before the speech, the judge is going to like zone out. They're going to just like stop flowing because if you're just saying the same things and if you're listening to the same things for 12 minutes, it's like really, it doesn't sound persuasive. It doesn't look good. So try to make new arguments and try to really, really just focus on giving these voting issues on weighing the round. And here's the last speech of the round. It's 5 minutes. It's the government third speech given by the first speaker of the Gov. Similar to the LOR, this is a non-constructive speech and new argumentation is not allowed, except that you are allowed to respond to new points made only in the MO, as there is no other chance for the Gov to respond to that speech. So Because the MO goes after your second speaker already gave your rebuttal, you are allowed to address those new points and make new arguments. But really, if you think that it doesn't matter in the round, if you think that it was just like something that was completely out of the blue and it's not even fitting in the theme of the round, it's not even one of the major like voting issues of the round, you can choose to skip it. But if you think it's like really important to respond to those, you are allowed to do that. In this speech, you should spend 1 to 2 minutes refuting new argumentation from the MO. Remember that the purpose of the speech is to use all of the argumentation you have made to convince the judge. So don't spend all of your time refuting the MO. Spend the rest of your time crystallizing arguments and weighing, just like we discussed in the LOR. And just like the LOR, many teams organize the latter half of the speech into winning issues. Again, your job weighing, refuting to new arguments, winning issues, and simply ending the debate on a strong note, telling your judge why you should be winning. For more information, again, look at the weighing lecture. It's really good. It tells you in detail about like what metrics or what like tricks you can use to be able to tell the judge why you're winning a round. So that is it. That is in detail about how you go into a partly round and how you how the speeches should look and how they're constructed. Remember, if you go into a round and you're just like a first-time debater and you're really stressed about how all of this would work, just don't think. You know, when you're in a debate round, it just flows. But you need to remember your job as a speaker. If you're a first speaker, you know your job is to be the person who's setting the constructive. If you're the second speaker, you know you're supposed to make new rebuttals, new refutations, fresh arguments for the judge to listen and really, really focus on signposting. And if you know you're giving the last speeches, you know that your job is to give crystallize around, give weighing arguments, and end the round convincing the judge why you win. Debate is like not that hard, it's not that deep. It might look really, really crazy if you're like just looking at this one big presentation, looking at this one big doc that tells you what to do. But when you're in a round, you just have to trust yourself and you need to trust that everything you will do will fall into place. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Outreach Debates Discord. Or you can just like reach out to me on my email. But that's all for today. Thank you.